네, 안녕하세요. jetbrains와 단군 소프트가 함께하는 웨비나에 참석해 주셔서 감사합니다. 저는 이 웨비나를 진행할 단군 소프트 김우성입니다. 오늘 웨비나에서는 인텔리지 아이디어로 첫 어플리케이션을 만드는 방법, 그리고 코딩을 보다 즐겁고 편리하게 만들어주는 단축키, 입문자와 안드로이드 개발자를 위한 편리하고 유용한 팁에 대해서 공유할 예정입니다. 발표는 jetbrains의 인텔리지 아이디어 디벨로퍼 어드보켓인 트리샤 지와 PR&D 컴퍼니의 안드로이드 개발자이신 정석준 님께서 해주실 예정입니다. 등록 페이지에서 안내됐듯이 오늘 트리샤의 세션은 한국어 자막이 포함된 녹화 영상으로 대체합니다만 3개의 발표 이후 질의응답 시간은 라이브로 진행합니다. 웨비나 중에 질문이 있으신 분들은 질문란에 질문을 남겨주시면 시간이 허락하는 한도 내에서 답변을 드리겠습니다. 오늘 웨비나 중에 다루지 못한 질문은 추후에 블로그를 통해서 다시 한번 답변 드리도록 하겠습니다. 네, 먼저 트리샤를 소개하겠습니다. 트리샤는 현재 스페인 세비야의 자바 유저 그룹의 리더로 활동하고 있으며 자바 챔피언이기도 합니다. 잠깐 트리샤의 짧은 소개를 듣고 바로 동영상을 보도록 하겠습니다. Hi, Trisha.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us today. Could you please give us a quick introduction?
To myself, or to, yes, I can give you a quick introduction to myself and to this session. Yes, I'm Trisha. I'm a Java developer advocate at JetBrains and Java Champion. And one of the things I love doing is showing how Java developers can be more effective with IntelliJ IDEA in terms of how we can use the tool better.
Right, thank you, Trisha. 자, 그럼 이제부터 인텔리지 아이디어를 활용한 첫 자바 어플리케이션 만들기에 대한 동영상을 시작하겠습니다. 이번 영상에서는 헬로 월드를 시스템 아웃풋으로 출력하기 위한 간단한 자바 어플리케이션을 생성하고 실행하고 또 패키징하는 방법을 배우실 수 있습니다. 네, 그럼 동영상 시작하도록 하겠습니다.
In this tutorial, we will create, run, and package a simple Java application that prints Hello World to the system output. Along the way, we'll see IntelliJ IDEA features for boosting our productivity. For example, coding assistance and supplementary tools. All of these features are available in both IntelliJ IDEA Community and IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. We can create a new project from the welcome screen by clicking on Create New Project. We want to create a Java project. We need to select a JDK for compiling this project. IntelliJ IDEA shows a list of configured JDKs at the top and a list of detected JDKs if we've already downloaded one or more to our computer. If we want to use a new JDK, we can download one. Java is packaged and provided by a number of different vendors. This list shows some of the most common ones. OpenJDK is Oracle's free OpenJDK build, which will always be the latest version. If we pick another vendor, for example, adopt OpenJDK, we can see all the available versions. Let's pick Java 14 since that's the most recent version, but in this tutorial we're not going to use any new features at all. This tutorial will work on Java 8 or even lower. The IDE will spend a bit of time downloading and installing the Java development kit. We need to wait for it to complete before we can continue. We're not going to use any additional libraries or frameworks for this tutorial, so we'll click Next. We could create a project from a template, but we're going to do everything from scratch. We'll call this project Hello World. We could change the default project location if we wanted to, but I'm going to accept the default. I like to put the IntelliJ IDEA window into full screen to give me the maximum amount of space for code. IntelliJ IDEA has created a project for our application. The project window shows us all the directories and the files that make up our project. Of course, we can use the mouse to navigate this window, but we can also use the arrow keys. We're going to create the package and the class for our example application. Packages are used to group together classes that belong to the same category or provide similar functionality, and are useful for organizing large applications with hundreds of classes. To create a new class, press Command-N on macOS or Alt and Insert on Windows or Linux on the source directory and select Java class. We could type a simple class name in this field. But if we want to create a new class in a particular package, we can type the whole package path separated by dots, followed by the class name. IntelliJ IDEA can create a number of different types of class files. For this tutorial, we just need a standard class. We can see that IntelliJ IDEA has created the package we wanted, and under the covers it's also created the correct directory structure for this package. It's also created a new helloworld.java file and generated the basic contents of this class file. For example, the package statement and class declaration. The class has the same name as the file, following Java standards. We can move on to the next line in the class file by pressing Shift and Enter. This will put us onto the next line in the correct position and won't break the previous line the caret was on. To create a standard Java main method, we can simply type main. IntelliJ IDEA will show, via the code completion dropdown, that there's a live template we can use that will generate code for us. If we press Enter when this is selected, IntelliJ IDEA will generate the public static void main method for us with the correct parameters. Live templates like this can save us a lot of typing. We can use Command-J or Control-J in Windows to see a list of all live templates that are valid for the current context. Pressing Escape will always close a drop-down or dialog without making changes. Let's call a method that prints some text to the standard system output. There are live templates that can help us with this code too, but let's look at how code completion can help us. If we type sy, we see a drop-down of likely classes we might want to call. We want system, the first one, and it's already highlighted. If we press Ctrl and dot, IntelliJ IDEA will complete our code with the word system and place a dot after it. This will also bring up the next suggestion. Typing O will list accessible fields and methods on the system class that begin with O, but then other methods and fields containing the letter O afterwards. The first option, out, is the one we want. So we can press Ctrl and dot again to select it and insert a dot. Code completion shows the most likely methods. If println is the one at the top of the list, as it is here for me, we can simply press Enter to select it. There are a number of println methods, and they all take different types of parameters. IntelliJ IDEA shows the different parameter types available to us, which can be useful. Type a double quote. We should notice several things. First, the editor automatically inserts a closing quote, so we don't have to remember to close our strings. Second, it highlights the string parameter for our method, so we can see this is valid type for the method. This pop-up can get in the way, so we'll press Escape to hide it. Now let's type Hello World. If this is your first time programming in Java, congratulations! You've just created your first Java application. Java files like this one can be compiled into bytecode and run. IntelliJ IDEA can do all of this for you. We can run classes with a main method either from the green run icon at the class level or from the run icon in the gutter next to the main method itself. We can see there's more than one way to run an application. For example, we could debug it. But for this tutorial, we're going to run it in the simplest way. IntelliJ IDEA is compiling the file into a class file and then runs it and shows the output in the run window down at the bottom. The second line in this window is the output of our program, the hello world we told it to print. The first line shows the command that was used to run the program. We don't usually need to worry about what this was, but it's useful to know in case we want to see exactly what was run and how. For example, we can see this command specifically runs our hello world class. We can also see exactly which JDK was used, which can be useful if we have multiple versions of Java on the same machine. The last line, which says the process finished with an exit code of 0, shows the program ran without error. Let's take a quick look at what happened when we ran the application. IntelliJ IDEA compiled the helloworld.java file into a class file. By default, the IDE creates a folder called out. Production code, meaning code that isn't test code, is put into the production folder. IntelliJ IDEA creates a folder for our Hello World project, then the directory structure for our package. The compiled class file, helloworld.class, can be found at the end of this directory hierarchy. IntelliJ IDEA also created something called a run configuration for the application we ran. If we want to, we can run or debug any of these run configurations from the navigation bar. If we want to go back to the Run window, we can use Command and 4 or Alt and 4 on Windows. Pressing the same keyboard shortcut again will close the Run window and put the focus back on the editor. When the code is ready, we can package our application in a Java archive, a jar. Jar files are often used to deploy an application to the production server. A built jar file is called an artifact. Let's look at how to create artifacts in IntelliJ IDEA. We can go to File, Project Structure, or we can use the keyboard shortcut Command semicolon or Shift Control Alt and S on Windows to open the project structure. Let's select Artifacts. We need to add a new artifact to our project. Let's click the plus button and select Jar. We need to choose From Modules with Dependencies. We don't need to change anything for the module, this is already correct. We do need to say which class in our project has the main method. We'll click on the Browse button. IntelliJ IDEA shows us a list of classes. We only have one in our project, so let's go ahead and pick our Hello World class. All of the other defaults are fine for us, so select OK. Now, our project structure dialog shows our new helloworld.jar artifact. This all looks correct, so let's press OK here too. What we've done is define how to build the jar file, but we haven't actually built it yet. We need to go to Build, Build Artifacts. We only have one to choose from, the helloworld.jar that we just defined. Let's press Enter to build this now. The status bar shows that this has been completed. IntelliJ IDEA puts the artifact in Out, Artifacts, in a helloworld_jar folder. We want to make sure this jar file was created correctly, so let's try running it. When we run it, it should give us the same output as running the original application. To run a Java application packaged in a jar, we can create a dedicated run configuration. In this tutorial, we've seen how we can use menu items or keyboard shortcuts to do things. We can also press Shift twice to use Search Everywhere if we don't know the shortcut. We want to create a new run configuration, so let's start typing Edit Configurations in Search Everywhere. When the correct option appears, we can press Enter on it. In the Run Configurations dialog, we can see the run configuration IntelliJ IDEA created for running the main method in our Hello World class. We want to create a new configuration for running the jar file. Let's press the plus button and select Jar Application. We'll call this run configuration Hello World Jar. We need to click on the Browse button in the Path to Jar field. We need to find and select our jar file. Remember, IntelliJ IDEA put it into Out, Artifacts, helloworld_jar. We can leave everything else with the default values. The last thing we want to do is go down to the Before Launch section. Select the Add button here, select Build Artifacts, and choose our helloworld.jar artifact. This will rebuild the helloworld.jar file first before we run this configuration. Select OK to save this, and select OK in the Run Configurations dialog to save our new jar run configuration. Now you can see our new Hello World jar run configuration is selected by default in the navigation bar. If we click here, we can see both our Hello World class run configuration and our new Hello World jar run configuration. Let's run the jar file to see if it works. We get the same output as we did from running the class file, which proves that it works the way we expected. How do we know this is running the jar file and not simply the class file? If we look in the Run window, we can see IntelliJ IDEA is using the -jar argument to run the jar file. It also shows the full path to our helloworld.jar file, whereas before it showed the fully qualified class name including the package name. Finally, just to prove that it works the way we wanted, Let's make a change to the Java file and see if we get the new message printed out. If we press Ctrl twice, this brings up the Run Anything box, which is yet another way to run one of our configurations. If we start typing hello, we can see both our Hello World Java application and the Hello World jar configuration. Let's run the jar configuration. It's printed out our new message and is doing it from the updated jar file. In this tutorial, we created a new package and a new Java application and ran it. We also packaged up the application into a jar file and successfully ran that too. Thanks for watching.
그 다음으로는 입문자를 위한 코드 작성 팁에 대한 트리샤 지의 발표 영상을 보도록 하겠습니다. 이번 영상에서는 인텔리제이의 단축키와 기능이 코드를 작성할 때 작성 흐름에 어떻게 도움이 되는지 배우실 수 있습니다.
In this screencast, we're going to look at how the features and shortcuts of IntelliJ IDEA help us to stay in the flow while we're writing code. The first and most important thing to remember is that we're going to avoid using the mouse as much as possible. Let's say we use Command-N on macOS or Alt and Insert on Windows and Linux to bring up the new menu. We could use the mouse to select something from this menu, or we could use the arrow keys. Or, like any window in IntelliJ IDEA, we can start typing and IntelliJ IDEA will search for our feature. Menus are context sensitive, showing us the relevant options for this action. Creating a new Java class lets us create one of several different types of classes. Now we have a class file open in the editor. Notice that by default, IntelliJ IDEA has a lot of navigation bars and tool buttons visible. We can use Find action, Command-Shift-A or Control-Shift-A, to turn off the editor breadcrumbs. We can use Find action again or Search Everywhere, which is Shift-Shift, to turn off the editor tabs, the navigation bar, and the tool window buttons. Finally, Hide All Windows will maximize the editor so we can completely focus on the code. IntelliJ IDEA will automatically generate common code for you. One way to do this is by using live templates. We can type a short sequence like PSVM and have IntelliJ IDEA generate things like the public static void method. We can even create our own live templates for code snippets we commonly use. We can run the current context, in this case the main method that our cursor is in, by using Ctrl-Shift-R or Ctrl-Shift and F10 on Windows. Because this is a Gradle project, IntelliJ IDEA uses Gradle to run the code and we can see the output in the Run window. Let's look at how IntelliJ IDEA helps us to write real code. When we're starting a piece of work, sketching out an idea or prototyping, sometimes we work from the outside in. We write code the way we want to use it, regardless of whether the class or method already exists. IntelliJ IDEA assumes that we want to work this way, and shows us clearly which bits of code need our attention. Using F2 takes us to the next error, and pressing Alt and Enter gives us suggestions on how to fix it. For example, here the IDE suggests creating a class for order. We can create this order class, and IntelliJ IDEA creates the class and a constructor that matches the one we were trying to use. We can use F2 again to find out what IntelliJ IDEA suggests for this ID parameter. And we can get the IDE to generate the field and assign it to the value of this constructor parameter. We can use generate again to create standard methods in this class. Let's create a getter for the ID. We can use Command-Shift-Down or Control-Shift-Down to move this method beneath the constructor. We can also generate toString, hashcode, and equals methods for the class. When writing Java code in IntelliJ IDEA, there's no need to manually type out standard methods, and using code generation also ensures a standard approach to these methods in all our classes. We can also generate test classes for our code. IntelliJ IDEA supports a variety of testing frameworks. Let's use JUnit 5 for this case. We can generate the test methods using Control and Enter or Alt and Insert. If we want to, we can change the shape of these generated methods in IntelliJ IDEA's settings. IntelliJ IDEA is designed to keep us in the flow of coding, so there are ways to keep moving forward when writing code. For example, if we declare a new variable value, we don't have to move the cursor to the start of the line to declare the type. We can use extract variable to create it. Or alternatively, we can use postfix completion to keep typing forwards and not have to move the cursor to another place. IntelliJ IDEA's code suggestions support camel case, so we don't have to type the whole of the method name, or even the whole of the first part of the method name, to get relevant code suggestions. And even though we removed the navigation bar, we don't need it to run tests. We can use Ctrl-Shift-R or Ctrl-Shift-F10 on Windows to run this test method. A key part of writing code is committing frequently. Now we have simple functionality and a basic test that works, we can already commit our changes. Command-K or Control-K on Windows and Linux lets us commit our changes. This is the new commit window from IntelliJ IDEA 2020.1. In older versions, we'll see a commit dialog. We'll commit these changes and keep working. We'll probably need to make some changes to our working code that break compilation. There's no need to manually fix problems with IntelliJ IDEA. Press Alt and Enter on any error, and the IDE suggests things that might make the code compile. Here, we could create a new constructor with this shape, but what we actually want to do is update the current constructor to take a new parameter. Once IntelliJ IDEA has made the change, the code is compiling again. The IDE has applied the defaults so it all works. If we go to the declaration of this constructor, we'll see that it has a new description parameter, but that it's not being used for anything. Let's not fix that right now, let's test drive it. We can use back and forth navigation to go to recent files. We'll extract our description value into a variable so we can check it in the test. We can use smart code completion to get IntelliJ IDEA to show the methods on order that match the type we need. We actually don't have one that returns a description yet, so let's call that as if it existed and get IntelliJ IDEA to create the method with the signature that we expect. If we choose Create Read-Only Property, IntelliJ IDEA will create a getter method and a field, but no setter. Running this test shows that the description is null, which is what we'd expect since we haven't initialized the order's description field with any value yet. We can navigate to the problem code by going into Get Description and then using F2 to find a suggestion that could fix the problem. Let's assign the description parameter to the description field and rerun the test. This time it passes. Let's move on to some other tips for writing code. Maybe we need to calculate the price of this order by iterating over a list of the line items in the order. To start sketching out this method, we might start with a local variable array list of line items. This class doesn't exist yet, so we get IntelliJ IDEA to create the most basic thing that will keep the class compiling. We'll probably want a price variable to store the calculation result, which we'll return at the end of the method. Again, we can use smart completion here to suggest the best way to complete this statement given the return type. IntelliJ IDEA has a number of live templates that help us to iterate over something. In the case of an array list like this, we probably want to use iter, which gives us the most readable way to iterate over a collection like this. We can then drive out the functionality we expect in line item by using the API and then creating the simplest method that works. Now we have the code more or less looking the way we want. We can use IntelliJ IDEA's inspections to guide us to the next steps. We have one warning here which says we're using a collection, but we never actually put anything in it. We could use the introduce field refactoring to turn this from a local variable into a field of this order class. We can choose where to initialize the field. Let's say we want to do it in the constructor. Now, if we go to the declaration of line items, we see it's a field in this class and it's initialized in the constructor. We can use navigate back to get back to where we just were. Not all of IntelliJ IDEA's suggestions are visible as warnings. Intentions and some inspections which are not set to warn will be accessible when we press Alt and Enter. Here, it suggests we could use a sum stream operation. One final thing we can do to simplify this method is to inline the variable, since it no longer makes sense for a one-line method. This code uses the Streams API from Java 8. I like my Streams calls to be on one line per operation to help me to read it. I can highlight the code I want to reformat and press Alt and Enter, and select Adjust Code Style Settings to see just the settings that apply to this code block. In wrapping and braces, we can change the settings for chained method calls. When we make a change, it's previewed in the editor, so we can decide whether or not that's the formatting we want. We can put the calls back on the first line by using join lines to bring the line below onto this line. This is particularly useful when working with strings which span multiple lines. Finally, once we've made all the changes we want, we could use run anything, which is Control, to run our test to make sure we haven't broken anything. With everything working, we'll commit all our changes. IntelliJ IDEA makes it easy to commit small sets of changes that we have high confidence will work. That's a summary of a very small subset of functionality in IntelliJ IDEA that makes it easy for us to focus on writing code that does what we need. Thanks for watching.
자, 트리샤의 마지막 발표는 꼭 알아야 할 15가지 IntelliJ IDEA 단축키 해당 동영상을 시청하도록 하겠습니다. IntelliJ IDEA에는 편집, 탐색, 리팩토링, 디버깅 등 다양한 작업과 관련한 많은 단축키가 있습니다. 이번 영상에서는 키보드에서 손을 떼지 않고도 생산성을 유지할 수 있는 15가지 단축키에 대해서 알아보겠습니다. 그럼 영상을 시작하겠습니다.
In this screencast, we're going to look at the top 15 shortcuts for IntelliJ IDEA in no particular order. Let's start with the most well-known. This keyboard shortcut can be used to fix just about anything. Alt and Enter. When we see an error in our code, if we place the cursor on the error and press Alt and Enter, we get a list of suggested fixes for the problem. For example, here we can change the declared type. We can also use Alt and Enter where we see warnings and suggestions. Pressing Alt and Enter here allows us to accept the suggestion for simplifying the code. We can use Alt and Enter even on code that doesn't have an error, warning or suggestion. Here there are a number of actions we could take. For example, removing the redundant types. On lambda expressions, we can use Alt and Enter to change the code to use longer or shorter forms according to our preference. Alt and Enter can fix warnings from inspections like this one, which suggests we use a method reference instead of a lambda expression. Even if the inspections are not set to warn us, we can still see and accept suggestions by pressing Alt and Enter in the right place. One of my favorite uses of Alt and Enter is to add a static import to simplify the code. You don't want to use the mouse when navigating between suggestions, so use F2 to jump to the next error, warning or suggestion. Let's look at the previous example again. But this time, we'll use F2 to jump to the next thing that needs attention, and then press Alt and Enter to fix it up. We don't need the mouse to open tool windows either. Command and 1 on the Mac, or Alt and 1 on Windows, opens the project window. So if you usually have the code editor taking up the full screen, pressing Command 1 or Alt 1 will open up the project window and put the focus in there. You can navigate the tree using the arrow keys and search by typing. To put the focus back on the editor, press Escape. Pressing Escape will put you back in the editor so you can return to the code. In fact, Escape is useful for closing any pop-up without applying changes. The project window may not be your best way to navigate the code. We can view the most recently opened files using Command and E or Control and E. Using Command E or Control E pops up the Recent Files box, which you can navigate using arrow keys. We can also open tool windows from here, including ones that don't have keyboard shortcuts. Like any window in IntelliJ IDEA, we can search for something specific in here by typing. We often want to navigate the code from within the code. With Command B or Control B in Windows, we can go to the declaration of a symbol. For example, pressing Command B on a field will take the cursor to the field declaration. Pressing Command B on a class name will take us to the class file. If we press Alt Command and B or Control Alt and B in Windows, we can navigate to an implementation instead. Often we want to find where something is used. Alt and F7 will show us all the places something is used. If, for example, we press Alt and F7 on this interface name, the search window will show all the places the interface is used, whether it's a field declaration or it's a class that implements this interface. We can run anything from anywhere by pressing the Control key twice. No matter where we are in the IDE or which file is open, if we double-tap Control, the Run Anything window opens. By default, this shows a list of recently run configurations, but we can also type the name of something to run to search for other run configurations. We can select increasing or decreasing sections of code near the cursor with Alt and up or down on the Mac and Control W or Control Shift and W on Windows. See how, by using Extend Selection, IntelliJ IDEA automatically selects the next valid expression in increasing sections. Alt and down, or Control, Shift and W, will decrease the selection again via valid Java blocks, all the way back to the cursor. Adding a comment is easy with Command and slash, or Control and slash on Windows. Pressing Command and / anywhere on the line will comment out this line with a line comment. Pressing the same shortcut will uncomment the line if it's already commented. If we select this whole block, we can use Alt, Command and / or Shift, Control and / to add a block comment. Pressing this shortcut again will remove the block comment. Complete current statement is one of the most useful shortcuts while coding. This is Shift, Command and Enter on the Mac, and Shift, Control and Enter for Windows. If, like me, you're in the habit of using complete current statement while you're coding, most of the time it will simply add a semicolon to the end of your code, which can be useful, but it works for more complex code. For example, if you press Shift, Command and Enter when you're writing a for loop, IntelliJ IDEA will add the curly braces and place your cursor in the correct place. In an if statement, it can add the parentheses and curly braces, and again place your cursor in the correct spot. Even if the IDE doesn't need to add any more code to finish your statement, it's useful to use this shortcut to put the cursor where you need it next. We can easily format the current file to the project standards using Alt, Command and L, or Control, Alt and L. This can be set to either just format the lines that have changed in this file, for example this one. Formatting can even add curly braces if this is required by our standards. If we want to specify a different scope to format, we can press Alt, Shift, Command and L, or Shift, Control, Alt and L, and select, for example, to reformat the whole file. Most of the refactorings in IntelliJ IDEA have their own shortcuts, but you can access all of them with one shortcut, Control-T on a Mac, or Shift, Control, Alt and T on Windows. When we press this shortcut on a symbol or selection, we are shown the refactoring options available to us. We can select one with the arrow keys and enter, or we can use the number on the left of the refactoring to select it. If we press 5 here, we'll extract this as a constant. Control and T also shows us the keyboard shortcut for this specific refactoring if it exists. You don't have to remember all these shortcuts. Use Find Action, which is Shift, Command and A for Mac and Shift, Control and A for Windows. Pressing this lets you search for any action in IntelliJ IDEA. The drop-down will show you not only the actions, but also the shortcut so that we can learn this shortcut and practice it. Find Action will let us search for actions, of course, but also settings so we can change settings directly from here. We can also search for and open tool windows. The ultimate shortcut is to search everywhere. Double pressing the Shift key opens a search box that lets us look for anything. Like Find Action, we can use it for changing settings. By default, the search box shows us the recent files, so we can use this instead of Command E. If we type something to look for, we can see results from classes, files, symbols, and actions. Search Everywhere also supports commands. So, for example, we can search for settings for appearance. So there are your top 15 IntelliJ IDEA shortcuts. Thanks for watching.
이것으로 트리샤의 발표는 모두 마쳤고요. 이제 질의응답 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 질의응답 시간은 최대 15분으로 사전에 등록 시에 받은 질문을 우선적으로 하겠습니다. 네. So Trisha, it's a Q&A session, right? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here and I'm ready for all the questions.
네, 그래서 첫 번째 질문은 맥북에서도 잘 사용할 수 있도록 소개해 주셨으면 좋겠습니다라는 사전 질문을 받았습니다. So Trisha, first question was tell us about how to use IntelliJ IDEA on Mac.
Yep. I mean, the short answer is using it on the Mac is the same as using it on Windows or Linux. All of the videos that I've recorded there, they were all recorded on a Mac. I tend to use the MacBook when I'm recording videos for IntelliJ IDEA.
네, 일단 맥에서 다 녹화가 되었고 화면을 보셨다시피 맥에서 사용하는 환경과 윈도우에서 사용하는 환경이 다 같다고 답변해 주셨습니다. 두 번째 질문은 인텔리제이에서 지원하고 있는 다양하고 강력한 리팩토링 기능이나 팁을 알려주셨으면 합니다. 라고 했습니다. Trisha, how about the refactoring features? Do you
Yeah,
have any
so
tips?
yes, lots of tips for refactoring. IntelliJ IDEA has a lot of refactoring. You saw on the videos things like extract interface, which is a simple refactoring. Extract variable, which is a simple refactoring. Let me show you some of the more powerful ones. So, for example, you can some of the smaller refactorings, things like extract interface, extract variable or extract method, are about changing code in a few lines of code. There are more powerful refactorings like extract interface, which allows us to move methods around. So let's take a look at extract interface, if I can find the right shortcut. So extract interface. You'll see I use find action when I don't know where the keyboard shortcut is for something. So for this, I'm just typing extract interface. I can do things like I want to give the interface a new name. So let's say my interface. And you can say which methods on a class you want to put onto the interface. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Okay, so you can see we've changed this so it now implements my interface, my new interface. IntelliJ IDEA is asking me, should I start using my interface instead of using extract interface where possible, which is good object-oriented design. And so usually I say yes. Let's tick that. Let's add that to Git, sure. Do the refactor. Oh, I'm not really sure what happened there. Let's do that again. Okay. Now with this sort of refactoring, what's happened is we've added implements interface. IntelliJ IDEA has created my new interface, and it's created the method alpha bravo on this interface. It's also updated the original class so that this now has the override annotation, and this overrides the interface method. As well as that, if we go to the test, it hasn't worked. I mustn't have done that. So you can get IntelliJ IDEA to automatically change that to use my interface instead of extract interface. That's just one example of a more complex refactoring. There are lots and lots of different types of refactoring. So we've got things like extract delegate, extract functional parameter. We can pull members up, push members down. I can take a quick look at this, I think. Pull members up allows us to, we've got a class here, B, which extends class A. So pull members up allows us to say this method A should be on class A, not on class B. And the reason being, we've got class B extends A, and we also have class C extends A, and that also has a method called A. So if we want to pull this up, we'll say pull members up. I can say I want A to go on a superclass. Replace both places, and now the superclass has a method called A as well. That's just two examples of more complex refactoring. I don't want to go through all of them because there'll be a lot of them, but there are lots of different types of refactoring.
네, 그 extract variable이나 메소드, 인터페이스 등 다양한 강력한 기능들을 확인할 수 있었습니다. 아쉽게도 전체를 한글로 번역드리진 못하고요. 화면을 보시고 이해를 좀 해주시기 바라겠습니다. 다음 질문은 유용한 플러그인 추천에 대한 질문인데요. Trisha, any useful plugins that you want to recommend?
Yes, absolutely. So you'll see that when I'm doing things like, what should we do? Should we do extract variable? Down at the bottom, this shows me the keyboard shortcut that I'm using. If you're working with other people in a team, it's really helpful to have this plugin installed, because then other people can see what you're doing. So you can see what keyboard shortcut was used. This is a plugin called, let's find it. So if we type plugins here, we can see plugins. This is a plugin called Presentation Assistant. This is a good way of sharing keyboard shortcuts if people are using the shortcuts. What's even better, if you want to learn the shortcuts, you can use a plugin called Key Promoter. Let's search. Key Promoter X. What this does is every time you use the mouse or every time you use a menu item, instead of using a keyboard shortcut, this will pop up what the keyboard shortcut is. So it really helps you to learn to use all the shortcuts as you go along.
네, 그 프레젠터나 뭐 키 프로모터 같은 단축키를 배울 수 있는 플러그인까지 소개를 받았습니다. 자바 프로그램을 주로 쓰는 유저입니다. 업무 관련하여 제이슨과 자바스크립트에 대해서 새로 배워야 하는데 새로운 코딩 언어를 접하는 기존 프로그래머가 새로운 코딩 언어를 접할 때 좋은 팁을 공유해 주시면 좋겠습니다. 라고 질문 주셨습니다. So there's a developer who is used to Java but not used to JavaScript. How would you recommend these kind of developers to study new languages?
I find that I can learn new languages easy inside the IDE if I have to do a small amount of code in a new language. For example, let's see, can I create, I should have some web code here somewhere. I have a web application here. So for example, if I'm using in this case TypeScript inside IntelliJ IDEA, I'll actually get things like code completion. Let's see. So for example, if I want to say I get code completion for TypeScript inside IntelliJ IDEA as well. So if I'm coding, I'm not very familiar with JavaScript, for example. I used to use it a long time ago. I don't know it that well now. When I'm trying to do any JavaScript, IntelliJ IDEA will give me some of the suggestions to allow me to use JavaScript. Similarly with HTML, let's see if we've got an HTML file here. So IntelliJ IDEA gives me a whole bunch of shortcuts for doing this. So it closes my tags off for me. If I decide to rename this div, for example, it will also rename the closing tag. So for me, as someone who's used to using Java in IntelliJ IDEA, I find that IntelliJ IDEA helps me learn other languages because it gives me code completion, code suggestions, it fixes my code for me as I go along, and it tells me what I'm doing wrong. And then if I don't understand that, then I can go to the internet and do some research on what should I be doing here instead.
네, 그 IDE에서도 새로운 언어를 배울 수 있다고 답변을 해주셨고, 예를 들어서 타입스크립트를 코딩을 할 때 스마트 기능들이 다 있기 때문에 코드 구조나 태그 포맷 등을 확인하면서 일부 도움이 된다라고 답변을 해주셨습니다. 다음 질문은 인텔리제에서 버전 관리를 어떻게 할 수 있는지에 대한 질문인데요. So Trisha, the next question is about the version control on IntelliJ IDEA. Do you have any tips around it?
Yes, absolutely. I used to use a separate program for version control, particularly Git. And then that would give me visibility over what was happening in my Git repository. Now I don't need to do that now with IntelliJ IDEA. If I press Command and 9, it will show me my my log for my Git repository. And here I can see these are all my branches. And these are the branches on the remote. You can see this is a fairly simple example because I don't have a lot of branches and I'm the only contributor. This is my name, but I can use this to see what's happening with the branches. I can do things like we've got a new feature. Let's see. I don't think I'll do it because I don't want to change my history. We've got a new feature like, for example, I can squash commits from inside the log. I find that very helpful. Git is quite difficult to get to grips with, in my opinion, Git specifically. And I find that the visual representation of my Git repository in IntelliJ IDEA is very helpful. I can see things like which branches are here. I can switch branches. Let's see, if I do that, will I lose everything? Let's switch branches. So I can, we're on main. So I can check out my main branch if I want. I can create a new branch wherever I want in my hierarchy. So I find these things, I find the visual element of my repository extremely helpful in IntelliJ IDEA. Let's have a quick look at the commit, the new commit window, because this is useful to understand as well. So I can do things like I can see the diff between, we've just seen what I did here. This was the old extractor interface. These are the changes that I made, so I can see that really easily. I can navigate easily between the files. It's a really good idea before you commit something. It's a really good idea to check all those changes and make sure that everything that you want to go in has gone in. You can do things like, if, for example, I decide I don't want to check these lines of code in, I can tick that and say, no, don't check that in. That's not something I want you to commit. And same here. So I can actually even commit line by line changes or not. Or I can say I don't want to check these in. And obviously I want to type a message, so we say useful message here. And if I want to, let's take a look at my commit history. So I have commit history here. The last commit I made was loads of new stuff for Java developers. That's the video I was recording yesterday. If I wanted to, I could actually say, oh, I need all of these changes to be part of this commit. And then I can say, okay, amend the last commit. And then all of these changes will go into this commit here. Now, the version control stuff, there's a lot of version control functionality inside IntelliJ IDEA. There are some more complex examples, like you can do cherry picking, you can do merging, rebasing, and so on and so forth. Most of this is under VCS and Git. You can see all the functionality there. Most developers don't need to do the most complicated stuff every day, but it's there in case you need it. Most of the time, what we should be doing is maybe creating a branch, committing some changes to that branch, and then merging the branch back to the main branch.
네, 원격 브랜치를 또 확인하는 방법도 알 수 있었고, 스쿼시, 스위치 브랜치, 커밋 윈도우 활용법 등 뭐 다양한 기능들을 또 소개를 해주셨습니다. 다음 질문은 JDBC를 위한 설정 팁이 있다면 알고 싶습니다라고 하는데요. Trisha, could you please share your tips around how to configure JDBC connections?
I can have a look at some tips. I don't have that many databases set up on this machine, but let's take a look. So once again, a tip is to use find action. And what I want is, let's have a look for data sources. So I can configure my data sources. And then these are my project data sources. I've just set up a new H2 database. I did that by saying I want a new H2 database. And then you set up the URL that you want it to connect to. In my case, I told it I wanted it to be in memory because this is my in-memory database. And then if I test that, it should work. Yep, and then I can give it a name, new connection. I won't do that, I'll delete that because I already have one of these. IntelliJ IDEA is very helpful for things like, in my experience with JDBC connections, sometimes it's a bit tricky to make sure that you've got the right JDBC drivers for connecting to the correct database. And actually, IntelliJ IDEA will give us hints like you're not using the right driver. So can I update the drivers for you? Here, oh, this one works now. This one was saying I needed to update my database. If I wanted to add another one, let's see if we've got MySQL. Will this one work? Can I add one of those? So I could add one of those maybe. Oh, let's try again. Let's try adding a, let's say SQL Server. And then you can do, it will tell you to download the driver files. So as with everything, IntelliJ IDEA will step you through all the steps of creating a connection. This is specifically a connection to the database from the IDE so that you can use the database in the IDE. This is not about connecting from your code from Java. But this is helpful because when we now look at databases, oh, that's not what I wanted. It should be here, database. I can see my connections here, and then I can see things like I can see my schemas. I can do things like I could create a new table from here, so I could administer my database from inside here. Let's call it Trisha table. I can create that. So again, I don't need a separate tool to actually to talk to the database. I can do all of that from inside IntelliJ IDEA. Can I create a new? Let's create a new column. Let's call it I don't know, ID. And then I can do things like I can actually let's see. I can execute that and it'll show me I don't have any data in there, but I can execute it and I can see all the data that's inside the database. I can also create a console where I can, hold on. Oh, I can't remember where that is. So there we go, query console. And so I can do select star from let's call Trisha table. You can see again, I get code completion inside IntelliJ IDEA, even for my SQL. So then I can run this. And obviously I don't have any data in there. But I found this very, very helpful. When I was doing large application development and I had to have a tool for databases, a tool for my code, a tool for my HTML, that was very difficult. Doing everything inside the IDE is very helpful. You do get code completion inside the IDE for SQL. For example, if when you're making a JDBC connection via your Java code to your database, you'll often have some SQL code inside your Java. And what you can do is you can say to IntelliJ IDEA, oh, I've lost it again now. You can inject language or reference, and I'm going to inject SQL. And then it gives me highlighting for my SQL code, and you can even get code completion. Let's see if this works. Well, not for my database here, but you'll get your code completion there. And then if you set up your data correctly, which I have not done here, you can get code completion for your table names, for your column names. And so even your SQL code inside your Java strings will be correct because it's tested against the database.
네, 그 H2 데이터베이스를 테스트하는 과정을 좀 보여주셨고, 맞는 드라이버가 설치되어 있는지 헷갈릴 경우에도 인텔리제가 알려주는 부분, SQL 서버 연결하는 예시도 보여주셨습니다. 또 다른 DB 툴이 없어도 된다는 장점과 코드 자동 완성도 지원한다는 내용이었습니다. 이 시간 관계상 이번을 마지막 질문을 해야 될 것 같고, 한 가지 질문이 더 있었는데 간단한 질문이라 제가 좀 현재 웨비나에 활용 중인 예제 소스를 받아볼 수 있을까요? 하셨는데 한번 물어보겠습니다. Trisha, we have a question. Is your example source code that you used for this webinar published?
Yes.
Anywhere?
Yes, it is. Hold on, I can share that on my screen as well. It's on GitHub. So JetBrains, IntelliJ samples. Here, let's put this on my screen. So here it is. It's on github.com, JetBrains, IntelliJ samples. It's publicly available. So all the code that we saw here, the Hello World app is not in here because the Hello World was a brand new application. But everything else, all the refactoring. So if we'll look for extract interface, that's all here. So all of these examples are here.
So Trisha, that will be the last question. Thanks for your answers. So stay safe, Trisha. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.